This is ABC Action News, taking action for you.
How you doing, everybody? So it's 3 o'clock, and we obviously have a weather alert going on. Shay Ryan in the Weather Center. We have Paul and LSG over at the desk. And what our plans are over the next hour is to have an interactive Q&A session with you at home. If you're watching on television, then we'll try to answer everything we can. If you're watching on our streaming app or on Facebook, you can actually ask questions, and Lauren and Paul will relay them to us. So let's give an overview about what's going on. Obviously, as we've been showing for the last couple of hours, we do have a tornado watch in effect until 9 o'clock tonight. And the leading edge of this storm is moving this way. You can see the red boxes. That is where the tornado watch is in effect. Again, the difference between a watch and a warning. Let's go over that. A tornado watch means conditions are favorable that we're going to see the development of a tornado. It does not mean that we have one at this point. There isn't. When it goes from a tornado watch to a tornado warning, then we either have the signature of a tornado on radar, or someone may have said, hey, I see a tornado, and they contacted the weather service, or law enforcement did, or a storm spotter did, and then a warning is issued. So again, right now, we have watches in effect with good reason. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in to what we have right here. The leading edge of the storms. And by the way, this will be a pretty quick moving front. So we've had incredible winds all morning and the afternoon. We've had wind gusts of 60 miles an hour, which is strong tropical storm force winds. And that was before any of this even arrived. So we obviously have already got a ton of energy in the atmosphere. And these storms now moving into Citrus County with winds gusting between about 40 and 50 miles an hour, and obviously some very, very heavy rain coming in. And there is a lot of lightning with this as well. Now, areas in Alachua County, Gainesville, Marion County, Ocala, they have already seen a tornado warning. In other words, a tornado was spotted. But the leading edge for our area, anywhere from Pasco County south, still offshore. Now, Lauren and Paul, I want to bump over to you real quick, because you were just saying that there's actually some sort of a state of emergency just issued temporarily for Pasco County. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, the Pasco County school buses are not going to be in service. I was out there earlier today, Dennis. I can tell you, just anywhere you're driving, including here in Hillsborough County and Tampa, up and down Dale Mabry, for instance, the red lights are blowing in the wind. Things are flying around out there,
and
so
all the bridges as well. We were on the Courtney Campbell Causeway, and the waves are going over the walking path on the Courtney Campbell. The Howard Franklin, we're also watching a lot of water, so be careful on the bridges. But yeah, Pasco County, local state of emergency, and Pasco bus service suspended as of 3 p.m. They do expect, though, to reinstate that later today.
Yeah, Dennis, I was just curious, because Lauren was talking about this, basically the storm surge that you saw on the Courtney Campbell Causeway. The flooding that we're talking about when we talk about sandbags, and you see these live pictures here, is that Courtney Campbell? Yeah, that's right there,
yep.
Courtney Campbell. You see the waves are really whipping there. When we talk about the flooding concerns in Pasco and Pinellas counties in particular along our coast, here's another live view. Are we talking more about the downpour, the rain coming from these clouds, the rainmaker, or are we talking more about the water that's being pushed onto the shore?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paul. And I think that's one that a lot of folks kind of misunderstand, because it has nothing to do with the rain. Nothing to do with the rain. Matter of fact, it has everything to do with the wind pushing the water and the direction in which that wind is coming from. Today, let's figure this out. Today, we've had southwest winds. So that means the wind and the water is coming in from this direction. But once the line of rain comes through, once the front comes through, the winds will shift to the west-northwest. And that is when we expect the water rise to occur at high tide, depending on where you live. Now, the winds have been gusting 50, 60 miles an hour most of the day, especially along the coast, 30 to 45 elsewhere. As a matter of fact, I was talking to my son a minute ago. He's like, Dad, we got more wind today than we've had where we live, any of the tropical storms that we have seen over the year. So it is really, really windy out there. And a matter of fact, Eric Waxler is live out at Hudson Beach, where water is not really a major issue now, but we're concerned, Eric, that later on tonight, as we reach high tide, that's when folks are really going to have to be a little more concerned. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, Dennis, right now, we're seeing the conditions really start to deteriorate within the last 10 to 15 minutes. Just a little bit of rain, but these wind gusts are about as strong as I've seen, and I've been in this location for hurricanes, for tropical storms, and they are gusts that kind of come and go. So you look at the trees right now, they're not going as much as they might be a few seconds from now, you see the flag blowing. There were people out here earlier kind of taking a look, as we've seen in the past, just to look out into the Gulf, because it is a beautiful yet ominous view looking out at the Gulf. And right now, ominous is definitely the word. The clouds are very low, they're swirling around, and the rain has been very minimal to this point, but the wind gusts have really started to pick up, as I said, within the last 15 minutes or so. So we're just going to continue to watch, as things change minute by minute here in Pasco County. I'm Eric Waxler, ABC Action News. Back to you.
Yeah, Eric, I would expect that most of that wind and the water won't be until this evening for coastal Pasco County, because again, or for all of our coastal areas, because again, you're not going to see that wind change until the front comes through, and that's not for another few hours. So unfortunately, if there is some water rise, which again, I'll say this again, this is not going to be as bad water-wise as it was last month. That was a totally different situation, right? That was a low pressure that moved in right about here. Matter of fact, Shay and I were just talking about this. I've been in this area 35 years. I can never remember, ever, schools closing because of a cold front. And yet, when you see winds of 45 to gusting up to 60 miles an hour, and we have a line coming through, you can argue the winds are every bit as strong as they have been with tropical storms. So, I mean, here it is. There's a look at the line. Obviously, a lot of lightning with it. Now, the good news is, any spot that gets hit, you're not going to see this heavy weather for more than 20 or 30 minutes. That's it. It's not like a tropical system where it lasts hours on end. 20, 30 minutes of the heavy weather, and then the rain lingers. Now, we went to Pasco. Let's go to Pinellas. We have our Casey Albritton, and Casey's live in Gulfport. We've been having wind reports along the coast, Casey, of 60 miles an hour in the last hour, and clearly it looks a little worse where you are than where Eric was.
Yeah, guys, I mean, you can really feel the 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts out here. It's actually hard to really just stand still in this kind of wind. And then behind me, if you take a look at the Gulf, you can see that water coming over the water wall right there and just going onto the sidewalk. And a lot of restaurants and restaurant owners and residents out here have really just been talking about how strong the winds are, how strong this storm is so far. They're boarding up windows, some of them. They're bringing out sandbags. They're really trying to take as much precaution as they can, and that's the big thing with Pinellas County right now. Pinellas County leaders are urging everyone to bring in any kind of loose items that you have out on your porches and try to put those sandbags in place, especially if you've had flooding in the past. If you had flooding in December or during Hurricane Idalia, Pinellas County leaders are saying you're going to see that flooding come again. But right now we're really just focusing on the wind out here. It is very strong, and later on residents are concerned about that flooding happening overnight. I'm Pinellas County reporter Casey Albritton, ABC Action News.
Thanks, Casey. And again, I do want to remind folks, we are streaming live on Facebook as well as other areas. Lauren and Paul are monitoring your questions. Here's a look at our tower cam out from Clearwater from the Hyatt Regency. And, you know, again, this is a strong cold front. The water rise is obviously something we're concerned about. That is later tonight. That has nothing to do with rainwater. Matter of fact, this is going to be in and out so quickly that I would expect to see maybe only ½ an inch to 3/4 of an inch of rain in most areas. There are the high tides. Now, this really only relates to folks who either live along the Gulf or along the bay. And at high tide, which is later tonight, the winds will have shifted. And that's when we would expect to see water rise. Now, again, I don't think it's going to be as widespread or as high as it was last month. But if you live on the water and you live in an area that is notorious for flooding and you know your area, then you have to take precautions, because the timing of this, you notice, is not now. I mean, honestly, we're closer to low tide right now. There's a 6-hour difference between high and low tide. And when you look at these numbers right here, these high tides are well into the mid-evening, in fact, even approaching the overnight hours. So again, as I said, Lauren and Paul are monitoring your questions on my Facebook feed. They'll be happy to share them. I want to go over to Shay Ryan in the Weather Center, because Shay, you know, we've been looking at the radar. It's getting pretty close right now in terms of overall rain, but obviously we're not expecting a ton just because it should be in and out rather quickly, yes?
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying, I mean, maybe 30, 45 minutes as the heaviest storms start in your area. You can count on them moving out that fast. So again, you could end up with some lingering ponding in areas where we've got poor drainage. We know those areas in those neighborhoods. We're pretty accustomed to them. And if you happen to live in one, or if you're planning on hitting the road and heading in that direction, you might want to think again, or at least watch the timing based on that. As far as the timing of the winds go, just wanted to show you here, going back to this map, that the wind speeds, again, are quite elevated across the entire area right now. These are the potential wind gusts. So as we look at what's going to happen between now and 5:30, you can see right around the I-4 corridor and on to the north, that's when the winds are already starting to lighten up some. It's not to say that it's going to go back to calm winds, but we'll at least see a significant drop in the wind gust speeds as we watch that frontal boundary pass by. So once those storms begin, I'd say you've probably got about an hour to an hour and a half before you really start to notice the wind speeds also coming down as they switch their direction. But again, we will notice them coming back up as we get into the overnight. So again, we do get a little bit of a relief from those winds right around 8 o'clock tonight across all areas. That's when we're gusting in the 10 to 20 mile per hour range. But you saw that they start to come back up overnight as they switch direction and start coming in from the northwest. That's when that colder air is also going to start arriving. So by tomorrow morning, it's going to be a completely different scenario than what we're experiencing here over the next couple of hours. So again, I think our primary concern, of course, right now is just keeping an eye on the tornado watch, which is in effect for all areas. And we also have a potential for damaging winds. So it's not just the threat of a waterspout or tornado moving on shore, but also damaging winds as that frontal system comes through. And you can see here where it's at right now. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning in the Alachua area around Gainesville. And again, that is because Alachua County or Gainesville. So that is where we are seeing some of the more likely damaging winds as that frontal system comes through. But at this point in time, we don't have an active tornado warning across our area or even off to the north along this front.
And that's great news, because obviously when we have a watch, conditions are favorable. Warning means it's happening. The one thing I'm curious about, though, so we've had a lot of wind all day, and I'm sure Lauren and Paul, a lot of folks have been asking too, what about local bridges? What's going on with that?
So right now, we haven't really seen anything on the local bridges. The Sunshine Skyway is still open. There is a high wind warning. High profile vehicles, don't go over the Skyway right now. But at this point, it's not closed. A lot of people are also asking about TPA on the Facebook right now. And they have not sent out a note that they're closing or whatnot. They're just saying to check with your airlines. So that's an important note if you're flying out tonight.
And we do have this for Manatee County. City of Bradenton offices closed at 2:30 today based on uncertain weather conditions. Also expect bus delays in Manatee County if you've got kids on the school bus there. I can tell you, I was out driving around, and Denis, 10-2 on the steering wheel, because, man, you get into those crosswinds at 50 mile an hour gusts. It can really rock your car, especially if you're out on the bridges and you're trying to maintain a steady lane out there. Not the best day, really, to be out on the roads, really anywhere.
Yeah, and we're seeing the water come over the bridges as well. Dennis, we have a few questions if you want to take those right now.
Sure. And then at that, I think we'll toss to a quick break. At this point, again, no warning, so that's a good thing. What questions do you have?
All right. So people are asking about flooding on Anna Maria Island.
Okay. So, yeah, with a southerly wind, Anna Maria will see a little bit of a rise. But honestly, the timing of the water rise, and again, this is not rainwater. So if you live in and this is completely Gulf water when we talk about coastal flooding. So if you're concerned if you're going to flood if you don't live on the water, you won't, because the rain isn't going to last that long. We're not going to see that much rain. When you see us talking about coastal flooding, it's because of the water and the direction the wind is pushing that water, and a 2 to 3 foot rise is possible in these areas. Obviously really nasty out there over at the mainsail and Anna Maria Island. But if you're looking, and the surf is obviously significant as well, but it will be later tonight. So if you're thinking, well, I'm okay right now, you are in terms of water rise. But when the winds come out of the northwest to westerly direction behind the front, these high tides are going to be a significant issue. Again, not as much as we had last month, but still a significant water rise and certainly some coastal flooding. So tell you what, again, no tornado warnings right now. We're going to go to a break. We'll come back and give you a complete update. And again, keep the questions coming up on our Facebook page. We'll be happy to answer them. That's why we're here. Back in a couple minutes. So we're doing some continuous coverage at least until 4 o'clock as this line of thunderstorms come through and a tornado watch remains in effect for our entire area. Obviously, a lot of surf coming in there offshore. We have a tornado warning for Marion County. Okay, so that's just up from us, just to the north, in and around the Ocala area. Remember yesterday we were showing you the map that showed the highest risk in orange color? That was our northern counties. Well, that's really what's been going on. There was a long track tornado in Panama City earlier today. The farther north you live, the better the chance you could see a brief tornado. But again, let's be really clear about this. Overall, when you look at the entire area, the highest risk is in orange, the slight risk is in yellow, in green is the very low risk, the marginal risk, as we say, on a scale of 5, it's on the 1. But remember, when we're talking about something of this nature, you have a large line of thunderstorms. It's called a squall line. And every now and again, there can be a little bit of spin in these. Now, the farther north you are, the more energy, because the low center and the energy is north of us. So the farther north you are, the better the chance you could see some of those strong thunderstorms. But bottom line, right this second, we are showing quite a bit of hail in some spots offshore. We have had the report of a lightning strike in Spring Hill. It knocked a traffic light down, knocked a tree down as well. And obviously there's a ton of lightning, but there's the spots with hail being reported. Nothing particularly large at this point. If it was, we would be having a severe thunderstorm warning, because that's what a severe thunderstorm warning is, either 1-inch hail or 60-mile-an-hour winds. So at least at this point, we're below that criteria, but you can still see, obviously, that line as it comes on through. And remember, once the worst of this arrives in your area, we're talking 20 minutes. That's it. 20 minutes of heavy rain, 20 minutes of gusty winds, and then this will move through, and behind it, you're still going to see rain for a couple of hours. But overall, rain is not a major concern here. We obviously know we need the rain, so a ½ inch to an inch of rain seems about right. The coastal flooding is more the wind and the water at high tide, and that'll be later on tonight. Again, look at these times of tides, okay? So if you're watching on my Facebook page or on our streaming app, you can ask questions. Laura and Paul, they've been checking things out, and I think you guys have some information on local bridges as well, right?
Actually, airports.
Oh, airports. Okay.
Yeah. So we just got note that TPA is definitely still open, but our assignment team was looking at the board. A lot of delays and a lot of cancellations. So
same thing over at St. Petersburg, SRQ. Lots of flights delayed there. Most flights in and out of SQ are delayed. I was just wondering, Dennis, because you've been warning about this El Nino cycle now for several months. You know, we get out of hurricane season, everyone sort of breathes a collective sigh of relief, you know, relative to other seasons that we've had. And now we've got this cycle of these storms. Are we going to be in for this on a regular basis, and with this El Nino cycle bringing us more powerful winter storms like this, or is this storm in particular pretty rare for January?
I mean, it's a solid storm. I mean, for us to get 60-mile-an-hour winds outside of when the storm is even arriving and the front comes in, I mean, that's a little unusual. But no, for El Nino, this is exactly what you would expect. And it's ironic, right? Because in the summer, we didn't get a lot of rain. So we figure, oh, boy, we're short. We have a deficit. We're going to get into winter. We're really going to drop down, because normally our winters are sunny and pleasant. In an El Nino, it energizes the atmosphere in the south. That's the way traditionally it works. And every 4 or 5 days, we get a front, or we get low pressure in the Gulf. So interestingly enough, when we're typically supposed to be dry is when we're really kind of beginning to catch up on our rain. We got a long way to go, mind you, but every little bit helps. So yeah, I think we see another one on Friday, not to this degree, but some rain, and another one next Tuesday. And we're hoping it won't be Monday. Obviously, with the Bucks and the Eagles going on over at Ray J, the last thing we need is a soggy field like this. But as you were saying, if you're just tuning in right now, a tornado watch remains in effect until 6 o'clock. And we are now seeing the leading edge of this going in. And the yellow boxes are severe thunderstorm warnings. So that's just to our north of the Villages, into Marion County, heading over toward the East Coast from Daytona, Flagler, up to Jacksonville. But all of this line is hanging together. So I don't care where you live in the Bay Area, you are going to see rain out of this. But traditionally, Shay, and we talk about this often, the biggest threat with these are usually water spouts offshore, and then they move onshore as a brief tornado. I know the Seminole area has been hit over and over through the decades of water spouts that move onshore. So are we seeing any kind of rotation offshore that poses any risk, at least right this second?
At this point, we haven't been. What we've been seeing have, in fact, when we look at the local storm, when we look at the storm tracks, it has mainly been the bit of hail, but we're not seeing any of that early signal of rotation. We're not seeing any of the indications, at least at this point, that would show us a concern for that. Normally, we would get a marine warning as well, a special marine warning, if we start to see a little spin just offshore. So far, haven't seen that. So again, I think things are looking in our favor. That doesn't mean that something can't develop very quickly, though.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're still fielding questions. Okay, I'm going to check out some information from the Weather Service. They're streaming live as well, giving updates on Slack and letting us know if there's anything concerned. So we're going to check that out. Lauren and Paul are going to look a little bit more at the questions, and we're going to get some more information. And again, Pasco County, last we checked, guys, Pasco County had a local state of emergency as this line came through, correct?
Yes.
That's right. And if I can just correct one thing I said SRQ, that's Sarasota Bradenton International Airport. They're seeing the delays right now. Most flights, in fact, in and out of SRQ, Sarasota Bradenton International, are delayed. TPA, kind of a mixed bag right now.
Yeah, someone actually just said on the Facebook Live they just flew into TPA and it was smooth. So I guess really just check with your airline and we'll figure it out from there.
If there's any airport that can handle it, TPA can, but they might err on the side of caution. It is windy out there. I mean, we've been feeling it all day, but right now it's starting to definitely pick up. You can see it in those live pictures.
And guys, again, as we have this group effort here, Shay's over there raising her hand with something to say. So clearly there's something going on over there, Shay. What do you got?
Yeah, so I stand corrected. We do have special marine warnings. And in fact, I'll come back on here. So along the coast, we do have special marine warnings. I didn't have the right tab clicked here on this computer, but on the other one, I can see it clear as day. So yes, there is a potential for water spouts offshore, and that does indicate that we do still have a potential for water spouts just offshore and the potential for a tornado moving inland as a result of that. And that is right now from Citrus County on south, and it does cross Tampa Bay as well, the Tampa Bay water. So anything from Pinellas County on north to Citrus County along the coast, that's where we want to keep a real close eye on here in the short term.
All right. Well, at this point, tornado watch, no warnings. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with an update as we continue our extended coverage of the severe weather with this line of storms coming on through the area. How you doing, everybody? So again, continuing our coverage of the severe weather threat across the area. Tornado watch for our entire viewing area. No warnings at this point, but the leading edge is now really just moving into our coastal areas. There is some spin offshore. It's pretty common for waterspouts to develop and move onshore as brief tornadoes, so that's something we're watching closely. Want to show you a Futurecast real quick. A lot of folks on Facebook have been asking about Polk County inland areas. Again, the threat pretty much the same for much of our inland areas as it is along the coast, although usually the storms start to weaken a little bit as they go more to the south. Timing, this takes us to the 4 o'clock hour, maybe a little bit fast. I think it's probably more like 4:30 or 5 when it moves through Tampa, Lakeland, all the way down to Sarasota. And then by 7:30, 8 o'clock, this thing is out of here in terms of the threat to the Bay Area. So again, tornado watch remains in effect until 9 o'clock. We have no warnings at this point. We have a lot of questions coming in on Facebook. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and we'll answer all those questions and give you an update on the line of storms moving through.
Live from Tampa Bay streaming news leader, this is ABC Action News, taking action for you.
How you doing, everybody? ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips, along with Paul Legrone, Lauren St. Germain, Shay Ryan. We're kind of just hanging out in the studio. Guys, it kind of has that feeling of hurricane coverage, which is kind of crazy because we were just talking about this. It's a cold front. We get a lot of cold fronts. So to be able to see cancellations and whatnot as a cold front comes through seems kind of rare, doesn't it? I mean, it's something I can't remember. Shay and I were saying it's been 30 years. I don't ever remember playing out like this. And fortunately, at least at this point, there is a tornado warning in Marion County, but there are no warnings in our area, and there's still some spin offshore. But the bottom line for the last couple of days, we've been saying this. Look, you're going to have 20 or 30 minutes of very heavy rain and then a lot of wind. The Skyway, obviously, still open. So that's good news. So we're at least at the Skyway, winds have got to be less than that 40, 45 mile an hour threshold that a lot of times they will close it. And there is the chance, though, as this line comes through, and Paul and Lauren, I'm sure you both have seen this quite often, that even if it's only temporarily, the Skyway could close as that line of wind comes through. I mean, are you seeing anything that concerns you in terms of cancellations or whatnot? I mean, I know Pasco County has some stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I would not be driving across the Skyway right now. Absolutely not. But it is still open.
Yeah, clearly we saw people going across the bridge right now. But I can tell you, just being out in it today, Denis, and you can see the camera clearly shaking there. This is one of those days where it's definitely 10-2 on the steering wheel. We know that, as you mentioned, the different counties are handling this differently. Manatee County currently under a tornado watch until 9 o'clock. So if you don't have to be out there, don't be out there. Pasco and Pinellas counties made the decision today to alter their school schedules. They didn't. Some had early release and some didn't have school at all. If we take another live look here in Clearwater, and that you look at the big picture here as we do the round robin. That's the Courtney Campbell Causeway, and I know, Lauren, you were out there earlier today, and all of a sudden that water got pushed up onto the highway there. Kind of comes out of nowhere sometimes with the gust of wind that can really move that water pretty quickly.
We were driving on the Courtney Campbell. My photographer and I said we need to pull over to get video of this, and the waves slammed into us, got soaking wet.
Wow.
So there's a lot of water out there that's moving quickly because of the wind. So let's get to some of the questions that we have going on right now. And by the way, the airports are all still open, but a lot of delays and cancellations. So check with the airline before you go out.
Look at that light pole there moving too.
Yeah, a lot of things are just moving and swaying in the wind. So Denis, we have a lot of Eckerd College moms on this Facebook group. So if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that area.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the winds, and we've been saying this again for a few days. Look, the overwhelming majority of our area is going to see winds of 35 to 40 miles an hour, gusts to 50. Think afternoon thunderstorm, all right? So then the question is, well, then why is there so much fuss about this? Why were some schools closed? Why? Well, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, I think there's a lot of folks who feel better safe than sorry, right? And the one thing you have to remember is in Pasco County and other areas, the water rise is obviously a really big thing. But for Eckerd College in general, you got nothing to worry about. Look, I mean, is there an isolated chance, a 1 in 500, that maybe a wind gust or a brief tornado could pop? Sure, we're under tornado watch. It's a possibility. But the overall forecast is some strong and gusty winds as we see the line come through, and yes, there could be some spin, and that's really why we're here. I mean, if you live in Seminole, you know what I'm talking about, because many, many times you have a waterspout that moves onshore as a brief tornado and does some damage. And every now and again, it can be bad enough that people could be injured. It happened at an elementary school back in the 90s. It can happen. So it's kind of our job to just walk you through it and let you know that for the overwhelming majority, we're just fine. But the water issue is another animal entirely, because a lot of folks remember last month, and there were some folks say, how come we didn't get warning? I mean, we stood here for a week and said there would be 3, 4, up to 5 foot water. But until you're living it, it's just one of those Florida things. We're not going to get it. I mean, I get it. A lot of people feel that way. So we're talking about water rise, and Eric Waxler is live right now at Hudson Beach, where the water shouldn't be coming up yet. I would think it would be more this evening, where folks are probably going to have to be a little issue, although it looks like I saw some lightning behind you right there.
Yeah, Denis, there is a little bit of lightning. I'll just call it nasty. That is what it is out here at Hudson Beach in Pasco County. We've seen bad weather for tropical storms and hurricanes in the past here. This is definitely major when we're talking about the wind. We've had some serious wind gusts, although right now we're in a little bit of lull. And you mentioned the water. You can look at the Gulf, and that's why we pick this area so often, because you can really get a good look at the conditions. And later tonight, perhaps the water will come over that seawall. We have seen that happen in the past. About 10 minutes ago, we saw the heaviest rain that we've seen, but now it's back to kind of just a little bit of a sprinkle, and the wind has definitely died down, but we've seen major gusts that have had those have those trees whipping in the wind and that flag going too. But the restaurant right here in at the marina, they're open. They're serving seafood over there. We've seen a few people come around to get a look, but right now it is quiet, and conditions definitely have deteriorated here, and we'll see if they get even worse in the next couple of hours. But for now, I'm Eric Waxler in Hudson Beach. We're going to throw it to Casey Albritton, who is in Gulfport. Casey?
Yeah, I'm over here in Gulfport, and really the wind is the biggest focus over here right now. We haven't seen too much flooding yet. We have seen some water come over the seawall, but take a look at the trees out here. The trees are really just showing how strong the winds are out here. It's kind of difficult to stand up. It's even hard to really keep the camera still at some points. But let me just tell you, a lot of these restaurants are really trying to prepare for all of this. They've been putting out sandbags all day and really just bringing in any items that they have outside that could fly around the area. And that's one thing that Pinellas County really wants you to keep in mind is if you have stuff outside of your house on your porch, you need to bring those in because those could end up flying around and could cause some damage elsewhere, and we don't want anyone to get hurt out here. So that's a big focus. Another big focus for residents is flooding later tonight. So that's why a lot of residents have put up sandbags near their homes and really just praying and hoping for the best, and we'll keep you updated throughout the rest of the evening. I'm Pinellas County reporter Casey Alberton, ABC Action News.
Yeah, Casey, I mean, if I were to guess in terms of our forecast, in terms of how the water rise impacts compared to about a month ago, probably about 18 to 24 inches less than it was. Still, you can see the wind. Obviously, it's coming in right now, gusting at about 50 to 60 miles an hour. I mean, those pictures that we were showing of those palm fronds, I mean, that looks every bit as strong as some of the tropical storm winds that we had earlier on this season. But I want to mention something. So I was at a grocery store last week, and I was talking to a woman who lived in Crystal Beach, and we was talking about last month's flooding. And she said that even though she knew it was coming, it's one of those things that, is it going to come up to my front step? Is it going to come up to my driveway? Is it going to get up to my house? And that's really the big question for coastal flooding, because you never really know with any sort of precision just how close it's going to get to your house where you live, depending on the way the wind's blowing and the direction in which it is coming. So the coastal flood warning is in effect for tonight. Nothing to do with rainwater. It's only the water push. And these high tides, we're actually more at a low tide right now. So honestly, over the next 6 hours, between around 8 o'clock tonight and midnight is when the water will be highest. I don't think it'll be as bad as last month, but yes, areas that have flooded in the past will likely flood again. We'll talk more about that and take a live look at radar, show you the spin that's going on offshore, and are we expecting any kind of warnings in our area in the next few minutes? That's all coming up in just a couple of minutes. How you doing, everybody? We are back, and we now have a severe thunderstorm warning with our continuous coverage. It is in Citrus County, and it extends northward into a tornado warning in Marion County. So, Shay, the leading edge is now just moving onshore. We're now starting to get reports of people who are hearing some thunder rumbling, and the winds are starting to pick up, yes?
Yes, and clearly we've already discussed a lot about the marine hazards today, and that boats and boaters should be off the waters today. And of course, along the coastline, we are starting to see some evidence of potentially some spin.
Got a tornado warning coming into Pinellas.
There it is. Okay, so we've got a tornado warning right now. I'm going to zoom in on it, but it is for Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas counties until 4 o'clock. As I zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that it is north. It's just barely touching Honeymoon Island, and then moving across the Palm Harbor area and into Tarpon Springs. So we'll take a quick look at the areas that are likely to be impacted, and it'll be moving right across Palm Harbor, East Lake, Trinity, Keystone, and Cosme. So again, this is in that Odessa Keystone area in northwest Hillsborough County. So if you are in those areas, you definitely want to stay indoors, away from doors and windows like you would typically hear. Right now, as we're looking at, let me see if I can
I'm going to go ahead and read this. This came in from the Weather Service. It's until 4 o'clock, all right? So what this is exactly what, boy, you can, right there it is.
You can see it right there.
Right there. There's your spin. So if you live in this area, it says a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado is located near Palm Harbor or about 8 miles southwest of Holidays, pretty much right over my neighborhood. At this point, it is there's your spin. You see where the red and the green, I'm going to walk over there and show this on the chroma key wall. But again, this is what we talked about just about 3 or 4 minutes ago. When you get a water spout offshore that then moves onshore, okay? So when you have this area right here, when you have red and green together, this is you're no longer looking at rain when you look at this, you're actually looking at air motion, and you're looking at rotation. So this is based on the rotation when that air is moving from or away or toward you, right? So like a merry-go-round. If you're in the middle, half of it's spinning one way, the other half spinning the other way. So when we look at radar, that is what we see as this is moving off to the northeast. Now, again, I know this area very well. This is pretty much my neighborhood. So anywhere from, let's say, Klosterman Boulevard off of Alt 19, all right, southward along Alt 19, over toward when you get into the Palm Harbor, the Ozona area, the Crystal Beach area. Now, let me be really clear about this. The overwhelming majority of these storms, when they are water spouts, they come on shore briefly as a water spout and then they dissipate, but not always. So if you live in this general area, and again, you can say from the north side, I would say, Shay, let's go ahead and zoom in even a little bit more because, again, I know this area really well. So as this comes in, I mean, I know it's a bunch of colors that might be a little meaningless to you, but all this means is the rotation as a water spout is expected to move onshore very soon, like literally any minute. So if you live in this area and you either see or hear the rotation of a storm coming, you want to go into an interior part of your home, away from windows. That's the key. We don't have basements in Florida. So when something comes in this direction, you want to be in an interior room on the first floor, either in a bathroom or in a windowless room if possible. I will tell you my experience is the majority of these storms typically don't produce a lot of damage, but when there is rotation, as there is, and the computers are showing it, then we'll follow it. At this point, looking right in there, I don't see a particularly impressive signature at this point. We'll see what happens as it gets closer over the next minute or two. But again, here's the area we're concerned about. Say south of Klosterman Road, down through Alderman Boulevard, on Alt 19, alternate 19. It hasn't made it to US 19 yet, all right? And then you go a little bit more south to Tampa Road. In that general area, Tampa Road to Klosterman is where that rotation is, and it is moving onshore. That's very near to Innisbrook. That's very near to several areas, Crystal Beach. So, and I will tell you, in the last couple of years, I think I've probably had 4 or 5 areas of rotation, water spouts, move onshore. And of those 5, only 1 caused a couple of trees to go down, and that was it. So, you know, we're looking at this right now. Shay, are you seeing anything else from the Weather Service? Have they sent anything else on there? Because I have yet to see anything at this point. But again, this is the area, and that's the only warning that we are seeing at this point in time. It remains in effect until 4 o'clock. Now, if it were to stay intact, okay, if it were to stay where the Weather Service is saying this is still the possibility of a tornado once it moves on shore, you would then be looking at moving east, headed toward US 19, and then over towards some of the subdivisions, maybe like the Groves or Cobb's Landing, over in that general area as it goes kind of to the individual cells are moving northeast, but the whole line is moving in this general direction. So, but my experience, and Shay, I think you probably would agree with me, in terms of what we're seeing on here, it doesn't look like a particularly impressive signature, at least at this point. I mean, are you picking up on anything yourself?
No, I thought it looked it looked like it was impressive for a moment and then has weakened some. And I'm just looking across the rest of the coastline here to see if there's anything else. And granted, you do see red next to green, but it's not you want to see a hook. You want to see a little bit of a dip and a C shape, and that would indicate the rotation. So as you get a little farther south here offshore around Madeira Beach, but again, this is well offshore, that's where maybe there's a little bit of spin in this area here where we're zooming in a little bit closer. This is where you're getting more of that coupling. But again, that's well offshore. So what we're looking at closer to the coastline, it looks like it's evening out some and it is weakening. We're not getting that real strong green.
It's pretty common. I will tell you, the Weather Service, I'll finish what they were saying. So, the impact radar indicated rotation, obviously the water spout. If it moves onshore, it thus would become a tornado. Flying debris will be dangerous to those caught without shelter. Mobile homes will be damaged. Tree damage is likely. And there's a look at Clearwater right now. Obviously, that's the line, the leading edge of the storm, the Squall line. But the main threat right now is, again, in the Palm Harbor area where there is a tornado warning. This dangerous storm will be near Clearwater, Holiday, East Lake Woodlands area, and Palm Harbor around 3:50. So pretty much right now where it's moving on shore. And I will tell you, the majority of the times and there it is, yeah. So the majority of the time, these have a tendency to kind of die out pretty quickly, but nevertheless, the warning remains in effect. And again, according to the Weather Service, if you live in this area, you take cover now. If your home is flooded, avoid floodwaters. I'm just reading from their advisory. If possible, take shelter in an interior room. That's what we were saying. Avoid windows. And if you're outdoors at a mobile home or in a vehicle, move to the closest substantial shelter. I don't know. I'm not so sure that this particular cell warrants that. That's more of a standard boilerplate that the Weather Service would issue when there's any kind of a tornado warning. But at this point, if you're just tuning in, tornado warning, northern Pinellas County. Again, the area where we would expect moving onshore would be between around Klosterman, along Alt 19, down to probably around Tampa Road in that general area. And it does look, according to this track here from the Weather Service, that it's more of a northeast track. And if that's the case, it could make its way up toward Landsbrook, East Lake Woodlands. I mean, if it were to continue moving off to the north, it could even make it as far north as Trinity. But at this point in time, what I'm looking at is probably a rather unimpressive signature at this point.
Very strong winds, some very heavy rainfall. There's not even that much lightning now associated in this area. So it's mainly the wind and the rain. And
we still do have that severe thunderstorm warning for central Citrus County, as well as northern Sumter County. Now that runs until 4:15. And that's a severe thunderstorm near Black Diamond or near Beverly Hills. And that's moving northeast at 45 miles an hour. Those winds have been gusting up to 60 miles an hour. And locations possibly impacted would be Hernando, Sugar Mill Woods, Inverness, Wildwood, Arbor Lakes, Lecanto, Homosassa Springs, Green Acres, Leisure Acres, and Crystal Oaks. So inland areas, we're not ignoring you. It's just you're not seeing any of this right now. So Polk County areas in eastern Pasco, Hillsborough County. Again, it does look like that. Have they moved the box at all, or is it pretty much the exact same spot? I guess it's still the
tornado warning.
Yeah.
No, exact same spot.
Same spot. Okay. Well, it's set to expire in about 5 minutes. So we'll see if the Weather Service continues it. But it does look like the individual cells are moving northeast. And if that's the case, then, you know, you could be seeing, at the very least, you could be seeing some very, I mean, there it is. I mean, there's your line. I mean, you see where the red and the green go next to each other. But what you don't see is any kind of significant circulation. So we have some pictures from the Tarpon Springs sponge docks. There's a cam right there. And it looks okay. I mean, you're not seeing any water coming up in the sponge docks, nor would you until this evening, because the water isn't even going to rise until high tide when the wind comes up. But what's good is you're seeing the palm fronds, you're seeing the palms bend over a little bit, but nothing too unusual I mean, it's been that windy all day long. We really had winds of 40 to 50 miles an hour all day long coming in along the coastline from Tarpon down to Clearwater and all the way down to northern Manatee County. But I'm looking again from the Weather Service. I've not seen. Here's another update. Let's see what
we're getting another severe thunderstorm warning for southern Pinellas County.
Yep, there it is. So what it is, severe thunderstorm warning for southern Pinellas in west central Florida at 3:54. A severe thunderstorm located near Seminole. Seminole always seems to get these things. Moving east at 40 miles an hour. So locations impacted include St. Pete, Largo, Pinellas Park, Seminole, Gulfport, St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, Kenneth City, South Pasadena, and Madeira Beach. And they even say remain alert for a possible tornado. Tornadoes can develop quickly from severe thunderstorms. If you spot a tornado, go at once into a small central room in a sturdy structure. So we actually have two warnings going on in Pinellas right now. We have the severe thunderstorm warning for the southern half, and we have the tornado warning for the northern half. Okay, we are reporting, I'm getting this from a ham radio operator. The Weather Service is saying they are saying a reported touchdown of a tornado in Pasco County. They are trying to obtain the location via the ham radio operator. So that is not official, but that is just a notification that just came down from the Weather Service. So at this point, we're just kind of waiting to see if they expand that the warning in northern Pinellas and into Pasco, because it does appear, if that's the case, my guess is it's probably the same one that was warned on and it is moving off to the north. At this point, okay, here we go. So storm surge, okay, we're also getting some information from the city of Clearwater, guys. Lauren and Paul, don't know if you've heard anything about this, but we are seeing the storm surge has reached Gulf View Boulevard on the southern portion of Clearwater Beach. So we might want to check on that, seeing if we're getting any information from Casey. I believe it was Casey in
Casey's in Gulfport.
He's in Gulfport,
yep.
Okay, a little bit south of that. But yeah, we are, and obviously there's a look at the beach right now. I mean, the water's coming in, but as we said, the coastal flooding that's going to be happening later really is not going to really start rising until we get to high tide and when the winds come around out of the west behind this front. So, Shea, officially that tornado warning is set to expire in 2 minutes for northern Pinellas. If you're just tuning in, tornado warning from around Palm Harbor northward. It does extend into Pinellas or Pasco. It's set to expire at 4 o'clock. We'll see if the Weather Service lets it expire. But again, according to the Weather Service, they did have a ham radio operator say that there was the report of a brief touchdown in Pasco, but did not say specifically where it would be. Looking at reflectivity, are we really seeing any spin? I'm not. I mean, again, this is a look at air motion, and you look for a little hook or a little bit of a green to red next to each other. And if you're looking at the area that was under a warning, I don't see that at all. So my guess is they might very well let this expire at 4 o'clock, and then we're just looking at the threat of severe thunderstorms, which again, at any point in time, a severe thunderstorm could become a tornado with this kind of a pattern. And the entire Bay Area is still under. There's that other spin coming in off Bayonet Point. So here's a look at Clearwater Beach, and again, another cam showing up there. And not seeing, I'm seeing some surf, not seeing really any significant water rise there. But now we have two areas of spin. So there you go. Yeah. You've got the one that's still showing up in Palm Harbor, areas of that. Have you guys seen any reports at all on social media or anything about any kind of damage? I've not seen anything.
At this point, no.
Okay. All right,
I can tell you, though, Dennis, it's affecting Hillsborough, too. So I just got this text from my son's high school, Sickles. They've got a shelter-in-place warning in effect, or shelter-in-place order in effect because of the tornado warning for staff there. If there are any students left over, I guess they're going to be for extracurricular activities. They're sheltering in place at Sickles High School, which is in the West Chase area. So Hillsborough County,
in that area.
And Hillsborough County chose not to. They chose to have school today. Every county sort of had to make their own decision when it came to that. But maybe it timed out right as you're seeing how this is coming in. I mean, school is pretty much ended for most schools, if not all schools in Hillsborough. But still, if you're left over at school right now, you're being told, at least in the Sickles area of West Chase, to stay there.
And I think that was the big concern, not going to school this morning, but getting home. I mean, a lot of the parents who were commenting on social media, they were commenting because they wanted to know how safe it would be getting their kids home, picking their kids up and going to the bus stop and whatnot. And I think that's, kind of the big question right now.
Yeah, some schools let out early.
Okay, so the Weather Service did let the tornado warning expire, kind of figure they would. We will see if they will reissue because, Shay, we both know that it's very common, even if a warning expires and a tornado goes away, that it can sometimes pulse back up again and they can issue a new warning. But at this point, that's some good news. That they, I'm looking at that ham radio operator again, talking about where there was a location of a touchdown. Still haven't seen anything. But at this point, it does look like they've at least let it expire. Whether they reissue, we will see. So summing it up, the tornado warning that was in effect for northern Pinellas has expired. There's still a severe thunderstorm warning for southern Pinellas. There's also a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Citrus and Sumter County. I think it's safe to say, Shay, either of those, certainly it's possible that there could be a brief spin, but the majority of the time, these move onshore as waterspouts. It's much easier for rotation to occur over the water because there's less friction than if it's over land. So if you get a waterspout develop over the Gulf, it moves onshore, it then runs into more friction, whether it's land, whether it's structures, and our tornadoes are usually really small. Typically they are. They're EF zeros the majority of the time. So it causes them to weaken pretty quickly. But at this point, that warning has expired. Are you seeing anything else up? There's a new...
Just to the north of us.
Yeah, okay. All right.
A new warning. Let's see, it's going to be... This is a severe thunderstorm warning for Flagler, Marion again, Putnam, and St. Johns counties.
Okay.
And then a tornado warning there at Marion and Putnam counties.
How are the cams looking, guys? How are the cams around Clearwater and the bridges? Because a lot of folks are asking, is the bridge going to close? Because this line is getting really close to the Skyway. And I think that's going to be something we'll have to watch because, looking out over in the Clearwater area, look, that's the traffic circle, I think, right there, right there over as you enter Clearwater. So it looks fine. I mean, it looks like an afternoon thunderstorm, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it does. And the water issues will not be because of rain. So don't think that we're going to be any kind of flooding because of rainwater. We won't. If there's any coastal flooding to be had, it is going to be because of Gulf water coming in with the winds shifting later on tonight behind the front. So at this point, that's kind of what we're looking at right now. I want to go ahead and see if we have some of those cams that we can take. And then at that point, we'll kind of, since we have no warnings currently in effect, I think we have the ability to either go talk to Casey or maybe go and check out a few more things. Lauren is checking in right now on if there's any kind of issues, any other cancellations. There's the Skyway. And Paul, I don't know if the desk has any opportunity to find out if that is going to be closed, if there's...
It's a busy rush hour about to happen.
Well,
People trying to get home
that's
or
a
go
valid
home.
point.
That's and that's one of your own main ways on and off, to get across the bay. There's another live look there. That's the Courtney Campbell. And Dennis, we were talking earlier, Lauren and her photographer earlier today were out there, and all of a sudden a wave crashed over the edge there right onto them. It just shows you the power of that wind that we're dealing with.
And again, looking at the wind gusts, we've seen gusts between about 35 and 50, and that's outside of the severe thunderstorm warning. Obviously, this is that leading edge, and this is what we've been saying. This is the mainsail. And for the last couple of days, our timetable was the leading edge of this rain, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. That will be the majority of the rain, well, the majority of the wind. Certainly, that would be where any risk of a tornado would be, at the first 15, 20 minutes of that line. Afterwards, it's no longer a concern. So once we go from the threat of a tornado or gusty winds and damaging winds, I mean, you get 50, 55 mile an hour winds, you can have some minor damage. But at that point, that's when the winds behind this line turn out of the west. And that is when we would expect to see the water rise along the coast. Again, I'll say this again, not as widespread or as bad as it was last month. But still, if you areas like shore acres, areas that are known for flooding when you get water rise at high tide, nothing to do with the rainfall. So if you live east of I-75, this is not you have nothing to worry about here. This coastal flood warning, nothing to do with rain. 100% water being pushed in from the Gulf, either into our coastal areas or onto areas in the bay itself. And the time frame right there, that is when we're a little more concerned about that water rise. Up until then, I don't think you're going to have significant flooding until we start to see that high tide. Paul?
Yeah, I'm just looking at TPA right now, flight status. I mean, it's delay right down the board. Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, you name the city, it ain't moving. So TPA is open, but effectively it's sort of shelter in place. The flights are not going out right now. Most flights also in and out of Sarasota Bradenton International are delayed. And sort of goes without saying, given the live pictures we've been showing you there, the Sunshine Skyway, if you're in Manatee County, really any local county, you could expect bus delays if you're expecting a student to be coming home in the next hour or so for those schools that were still actually open or released on time today. A lot of schools, a lot of counties did not have school today, including Pasco and Pinellas. Hillsborough did. But some of them changed their schedules and released early. And so this is affecting different areas as storms tend to do in Tampa Bay. It affects different areas in different ways. If you're along the coast, Dennis, as you've been pointing out, the flooding, particularly from the wind, the surge, is really going to be the main factor. The good news, this is a quick mover, it appears. As you were saying, we're done with this in 25 minutes once it starts get going. But right now, this is what we're dealing with. We're continuing our team coverage. ABC Action News reporter Casey Albritton has been in Gulfport all day with how people started really getting ready for this storm yesterday and early this morning.
I'm Casey Albritton in Pinellas County, and here in Gulfport, the wind is really picking up. Waves are already crashing over the sidewalks, and it's very strong out here. Pinellas County leaders are warning everyone to bring in items, make sure they're bringing any loose items into their homes to make sure they don't blow away or cause any damage. In addition to that, a lot of these restaurants here along Gulfport are really trying to prepare for this storm. They're bringing in a lot of their items. They're also using sandbags to try to keep from flooding. Pinellas County leaders say if you have had flooding in the past, you need to be prepared to have that happen again, especially if you had flooding in December or during Hurricane Idalia. They say they really need you to be prepared going into this storm, and it's better to be safe than sorry. I'm Pinellas County reporter Casey Albritton, ABC Action News.
And before the storm rolled in, look at this, people living in St. Petersburg, they were out there packing up on the sandbags. One woman telling us earlier today that her Shore Acres home flooded in August during Hurricane Idalia, and then just last month, she told us water flooded her garage during that no-name storm that we saw. Another man telling us his apartment also prone to flooding.
Just water comes in, you know what I'm saying? Like on that side of the building is my bathroom and my bedroom and my closet. So, you know, I make sure that in those areas, if there's something on the floor, you know, I don't want it to be anything that's real precious to me.
So a lot of work for a lot of people throughout Tampa Bay today, particularly along the coast. There are places still handing out sandbags, and for more information, go to our website, abcactionnews.com. We turn next here to Pasco County, where Eric Waxler is dealing with strong winds before the worst of that storm moves through.
Yeah, Hudson Beach is a place we've come to before for tropical storms and hurricanes because you can really get a look at what's coming from the Gulf. And right now it is an ominous sight looking out as the water rises and the winds pick up. Around 3 o'clock is when the weather really started to deteriorate. And we're seeing major gusts of wind as strong as I've ever felt here. You can look up at the trees and sometimes get a really good look at these gusts. That's nowhere near as strong as we've seen it. But you look at that American flag, it is definitely blowing hard. We've seen the sheriff's office come by here to check on things. We've seen a few people that have come by earlier to just get a look at the scene, but they have kind of gone home right now. Although the restaurant here at Hudson Beach near the marina is still open for business, but the rain is now starting to fall a little harder, and conditions definitely are deteriorating. At Hudson Beach, Eric Waxler, ABC Action News.
Eric, thank you. Make sure to stay with us both on air and online for all the storm coverage. You can also scan that QR code right there on your screen to take you to our website, abcactionnews.com/weather, to stay up to date on the latest conditions no matter where you are. Stay with us. No, go ahead.
7,000 out without power with Duke and 1,000 with Tico. So nearly 10,000 people without power.
Okay. All right. Toss to Shay. All right.
Put Denis at the wall? Whatever you guys want. Yeah, let's do what we've
I
done.
don't have any information.
Right
Oh,
here.
you've got it?
Yeah. I can read it. Okay, go ahead
Here it
if
is,
you
here
want.
it is. Central Pinellas extending into Hillsborough. Also watching an area in northern Hillsborough, southern Pasco. So what's it saying? Okay. Yeah, just
As long as you got the graphics up, we're good.
yeah. All right, so we have a new tornado warning. That cell that was the severe thunderstorm warning in southern Pinellas, the one that we said at any point it could become a tornado warning, it's become a tornado warning. This is in effect until 4:30. It impacts central Pinellas County and central Hillsborough County. At 4:10, you've had that severe thunderstorm, and capable of producing a tornado is located over Pinellas Park, all right? And it's moving east at 45 miles an hour. So in terms of locations, this is what we're looking at. Anywhere from Tampa, St. Pete, Feather Sound. Eventually, if it makes it across the bay to the MacDill Air Force Base, the Gandy, and over toward West and East Lillman. And that's at about 4:15 right now. Now, there's other areas that could be impacted by this thunderstorm eventually. Again, a lot of times when this goes over the bay, they dissipate. But if it were to continue to move in that general direction, then it's going to make it over to Ybor, South Tampa, Soho, UT, the Wheaton Island State Preserve. You've got Venetian Isles, Sawgrass Lake Park, Lillman, Peter O'Knight Airport, and Kenneth City. So this area right here, I mean, Shay, we were looking at this a couple of minutes ago. I mean, this certainly was in terms of rotation, there was some out there. But again, I'm not really seeing.
It's looking more like the line of the thunderstorms, not necessarily a rotation couplet that we would look for.
Exactly, yeah. And it's, even the one in Pinellas, the one in northern Pinellas, which expired. I mean, I've not had any reports of any damage, fortunately, right? Mm-hmm. But, when you have a severe thunderstorm, you can get winds of 60+ miles an hour.
Straight line winds can be worse than a weak tornado sometimes.
Yeah. So officially, the Weather Service did see enough rotation in this. I'll be honest, I'm not seeing a ton of it at this point. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It might be my eyes are going, but
yeah, me both.
But at the very least,
it could be that it is just above the surface and hasn't quite reached the ground. Sometimes you'll get some circulation that doesn't reach the ground as well.
Yeah. So at this point, we still have. And by the way, the Weather Service also mentioned that there's another area that they're looking at in northern Hillsborough County. Well, this one has all the watch boxes on there. I don't want that. Yikes, that's not good. No bueno. All right, so you look into northern Hillsborough County as well, southern Pasco. At this point, do we have storm tracks? Pop that on there. There we go. So, yeah, there's the other one.
That's the one they're talking about.
Yeah, so see this in southern Pinellas, northeast of Keystone, near the Odessa area, actually. Mm-hmm. And let's go ahead and storm track that and see where it's going, because I certainly think, here we go. So these are some of the areas that this early rotation, this has not been warned on yet. A couple of numbers here. When you see a Titan impact of 4, that means it's probably not a tornado at this point. Usually you would expect to see that number to be a 7 before it actually means it's a trackable entity. But there is some, and that's probably why we see early spin on that. But at this point, that one is moving off to the southeast. And by the way, letting you know, the ham operator in Pasco is saying they cannot confirm that tornado touchdown that they had mentioned earlier on. So that's good news. We're also getting a 1-inch total rainfall rate, winds gusting up to about 45 miles an hour. So at this point, here's what's happening. You've got this tornado warning, all right, that was from right around the Pinellas Park area moving east. Whoa, did we just lose some monitor that we lost? Oh boy, that's what happens. You get lightning around our building and we start to lose monitors. But not on TV, luckily. So there's a look at the area that's moving east. As we look at reflectivity, again, we look at where, I'm not seeing a lot of spin with this, but there's still winds, easily 50 to 60 miles an hour. And then the area up here where there's also some decent winds. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see the line. There's your squall line right there. I mean, when you look at it moving in from right here, just right in that general direction, and back behind it, the winds shift. And once they do, that's when we're going to start to see the possibility of some water picking up down the road. Shay, why don't you go ahead and take that? I'm gonna head back over. The latest thing that I'm seeing here, again, that tornado warning remains in effect until 4:30. It's possible that they could let it go before then if they no longer see rotation. So far, those are the two things that we're seeing. Paul, in terms of, okay, never mind. It's changing his mic battery here. That's part of the continuous coverage stuff. So again, looking out over at northern Pinellas, we had a warning about 15, 20 minutes ago. I've talked to a lot of folks in northern Pinellas in the last 15 or 20 minutes, and none of them had any kind of damage at all. They had winds all day long, winds 40, 45 miles an hour. So at least from the first warned area for northern Pinellas, we have not seen any damage. The second warned area, southern Pinellas, if it were to make across the bay with winds gusting between 20 and 45 miles an hour. These are your current wind gusts. So you look at these numbers, these are equivalent to minimal tropical storm force winds. And that's sustained winds in some areas, but these are gusts. Again, the gusts are short term. You know what that is when you have that big area of wind blowing real quickly and then it comes right back down again. Sustained winds are over 60 seconds. So let's go back to radar again real quick. And as we look at the area, the brief tornado, and the Weather Service even said it. They'll go, look, we have a severe thunderstorm. All right, that's what the tornado warning was from. We have a severe thunderstorm warning. Within that, we think there might be a little bit of rotation going on, and the Weather Service in Ruskin is really good about this. They are under the mode better safe than sorry. They're going to issue a warning more often than not on something that might be marginal just because they don't want to take a chance of you not being notified. It's kind of like why we're on TV at this time. We know 99.9% of the area is not going to be seeing severe weather out of this. But if you're in that 1/10 of 1% and you get a tornado and you weren't notified, we're not doing our jobs. So when we look at something like this and you look at the track, here's some of the timing. If this were to maintain, regardless, even if it isn't a tornado, areas right here from Cross Bayou, Pinellas Park, the Gandy, over to Palmacia. If this were to make it over the bay, and I will tell you, the storms will. I kind of doubt the tornado would, but the storms will certainly make it across the bay, and you can expect, there's your squall line. I mean, there it is. You see the red area, and we've been saying for a couple of days, you're going to get about 20 to 25 minutes of heavy rain and gusty winds. It's about the way this is playing out. Once you get on the other side of this red, so areas like Palm Harbor, Tarpon Springs, Holiday, all the way west of US 19 in Pasco County, it's done for you in terms of the severe threat. Yes, there's still a watch in effect, but the reality of it is the only area that is even concerned about severe weather right now is the red area right there in that line. Again, about a 20 to 25 minute stretch of gusty winds, maybe a bit of hail, although we haven't had any confirmed reports of hail, and again, the possibility of a brief tornado. Once you get on this side of it, that threat is pretty much over. There's also a tornado warning up north for areas north of our area. So at this point in time, it's moving through the metro area right at the rush hour. So we've been looking at our cams. And matter of fact, if we can go and take a look at some of those cams right now and see how things are looking, I would think over Riverview area, I would think our Rivergate Tower in Tampa is certainly going to be looking. There it is right there, as a matter of fact. And this is just the leading edge. As a matter of fact, this camera is pointing in the direction where if that cell were to maintain itself and make it out over the bay, we would see it right here eventually. It's not there yet, and honestly, I don't think it'll ever get there, but it is certainly something that we'll keep our eyes on over the next 5 or 10 minutes. But my gut tells me this will expire at 4:30 unless we get another pulse of energy, which can sometimes happen. But the overall view of the CAM network itself and looking at the radar itself, I mean, you've got this 15, 20 mile wide area of very heavy wind and very heavy rain. And within that, and this is what we've been saying for days now, there's going to be a little spot that might pick up an isolated tornado. And that's so far what we've had. Although the confirmed or the allegedly confirmed report of the tornado in Pasco County from the ham radio operator based on the Weather Service's chat does not appear to have verified. So that's great news. So at this point, we're looking at Rivergate that looks pretty nasty. But if we go back to radar, the red box.
Now adding a new area around Gulfport is a new tornado warning now. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer.
Let's go over to Shay now.
So we've got another area. I'm going to highlight it in white so you can see.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a small area here. And so let me read what they're saying. Okay, so once again, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located over St. Petersburg, moving northeast at 45 miles per hour. This was a radar indicated tornado.
They've all been radar indicated so far, right?
Yeah, no, they've all been. And so this isn't any different than what we have seen before, other than I was reading just before this that they had an area of interest near Gulfport. So I'm going to zoom in here and you can kind of see where we're looking at. And Gulfport being just to the west of where they have initiated the warning. So the warning is extending here over downtown St. Pete and then heading out into the water and here across 19, 275. That's about where the cutoff is. But again, this is the general area that we're looking at in southern Pinellas County. I'll zoom back out and you can see how it intersects with the rest of our tornado warning here that's going out over McDill and South Tampa, and then the severe thunderstorm watch is in the yellow box. So it's all just in that same general area where it seems to be more active, where there's a potential for not only the damaging winds but also some spin. And those seem to be the two biggest concerns, of course, the damaging winds and any spin. There isn't all that much lightning in that area. definitely heavy rainfall. This is all tracking off to generally the east at about 45 miles per hour. So this is going to move through pretty quickly. Paul?
All right. I just have a quick question, guys. I think a lot of people went to work today probably thinking, you know what, we'll deal with this when it happens. We're about to hit rush hour here, Denis, coming up on 5 o'clock. I mean, it sounds like an obvious question, but should people just sort of hang tight before they hit the roads, given the situation right now? And just,
not a bad idea.
This thing is going to be over in what, an hour or so? Or
yeah. I mean, again, we've been saying the numbers 20 to 25 minutes for the last day or so. I mean, that's the worst of this. Wherever you are, when it hits you, it's going to last for 20 to 25 minutes, and then it'll be through. So if you're in an area that, if you're looking, and we're looking out there at the Tarpon Springs area, it's past Tarpon. So Tarpon is no longer, but the water rise. Now that is something else. Matter of fact, is this a look at Spring Bayou? I think it is. Yeah, okay, so this is where the Epiphany was on Saturday. And it's very common for water to rise in the Spring Bayou area, and those streets get flooded. It happens all the time. I used to live in this area, so I know it very well. When you get a westerly wind that comes in, you are going to see that water come in. So that's what's now happening behind the front, okay? But I want to go back to radar, guys, because we have a tornado warning in effect. We have 2 tornado warnings in effect. So let's focus on what we need to focus on. So you have this right here. As Shay said, we have 2 separate areas. So what's happening is we've got that line, that squall line. Squall line's about 20 miles wide. Within that squall line, that's that 20 to 25 minutes we talked about, okay? So within that squall line, you've got 40 to 50 to 55 mile an hour winds as they gust. And within that squall line, you have little areas of spin. And that's what's happening. You have 2 separate areas, one that was around Kenneth City that is moving toward this box. You see this kind of polygon, that odd shape right there? And then you've got I could ask my son in 10th grade, he'd be able to tell me exactly what shape that is, but I can't remember. But then if you look at the other one, which is moving from west to east, that is another area of spin, okay? And within that is why the Weather Service issued these 2 separate tornado warnings. There are 2 separate areas of spin. Now, fortunately, at this point, we haven't had any reports of any damage. And at this point, I'm not so sure we're going to, keeping our fingers crossed, because the signatures have been kind of lukewarm at best. I mean, you guys have watched us long enough probably to know when you can see a very distinct signature of a tornado. These have been kind of marginal, but they're still spin, so we still talk about it. But at this point, these are the 2. Now, right there, okay, you get a little bit of something going on there.
And that's where they're saying, now the National Weather Service is saying, is that the rotation is exiting off of the South Pinellas Peninsula and into the bay. So that's exactly what you're pointing at.
Yeah. So there it is, and you can kind of see, I mean, it looks a little bit better, honestly, than the ones did earlier on. In fact, to me, at this point, it's pretty much the only game in town, at least right this second, because you can kind of see how the colors are brightening up a little bit. And you've got the green and the red right there, so
and
that's
that little
more than
bit
likely.
Of a notch. When we were looking earlier, that red and green line was almost completely straight, and now you get that little notch.
Little curve. See that? A little right there, and then that little one right there. So yeah, that is more than likely. And so what does this mean? All right. So this, if you live, what is that area right down there? I mean, it's exiting into the bay, as Shay said. So let's say, okay, so that's near Coquina Key Drive. So right in that general area on the east side of St. Pete. Let's go ahead and expand this out, Shay, and go ahead and keep this map, and then draw the timeline across the bay and into the western side of Hillsborough County. And we'll see if that, if it were to stay together, and I will tell you the majority of the time it doesn't, but if it were to stay together, this is kind of the track in which it would take. It's moving maybe a little bit more to the northeast, so maybe anywhere from Apollo Beach northward. I mean, the Weather Service was saying it could impact the MacDill, so there is that chance. But I will tell you, the majority of the time, these actually don't make it across the bay. But at this point, we still have the 1 tornado warning set to expire in a minute. We've got the other tornado warning just issued until 4:45, and we'll see how that goes. And then here's some of the timelines. If it were to make it all the way across the bay, that's kind of the timing that we are talking about. So What we're gonna do now, we're gonna go over to Eric Waxler, because Eric was in Hudson, in the Hudson Beach area. Now the storms have passed him. He's through with the rough weather, but now our concern turns to the winds coming around, and we're gonna see if we're gonna see any water rise in that area over the next couple of hours. And honestly, it could really be over the next 6 hours. Is Eric out there?
You got me?
Yeah.
Hey, Dennis. Yeah, in the last 30 minutes, the weather really took an extreme change. A squall came in, and look how rough the Gulf is right now. When you came to us earlier, it was nowhere near this rough, and then the water just started coming over the wall, and you can see, you were able to walk there. You could see the sidewalk on the other side of the wall about 30 minutes ago, and now it is flooded. You do see a couple guys on the swing over there. If you look over in that direction, some people are out here just admiring the crazy weather that we're experiencing here in January. The other thing that I've noticed in the last 30 minutes is an extreme temperature drop. It feels like at least 15 degrees colder than it was just about maybe 45 minutes ago. So the wind has picked up, it's cold, and you can see over there the water just coming over the wall, and the waters are coming up further and further. If it starts to progress even more, we're gonna have to get back even farther and move some of the cars because the flooding will come up even higher. And actually, if you look at that pavilion down there, the water actually had flooded the whole thing. Now it looks like it may have receded a little bit, but definitely a big weather change here in the last little bit. It started with a big downpour of rain, and that has kind of stopped, but now it's cold and windy, and water is coming over the wall here in Hudson Beach in North Pasco County. Back to you.
Yeah, Eric, I mean, that's your cold front. I mean, it's classic stuff here. The winds were out of the south. All right, and then once the front comes through, that was obviously always our concern throughout the evening, because look how the winds have shifted. Look at the arrows. They're now moving out of the northwest and out of the northwest in Clearwater. So when you see that, then the water all of a sudden is pushed in a different direction, and it's pushed on shore. Before, out ahead of it, the winds have been more out of the south, like they still are in Sarasota. You see that? So your winds in Sarasota, because the front hasn't made it, are moving in this direction. So the water won't push on shore. But now that the front has gone through, look what happens. The water starts to rise. And that's why there's a coastal flood warning in effect, because as we go through the afternoon, and even more so in the evening, when you get these strong west to northwest winds at a high tide, one of the highest tides of the month, then all of a sudden you have an issue with coastal flooding. So again, it does look like the one warning has expired, yes?
Yeah, and we have a new tornado warning now for Hillsborough County.
All right, let's go over to Shay, and you can go ahead and read that advisory on that.
So this one, it's the severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado has been located near MacDill Air Force Base, about 8 miles south of downtown Tampa, and it's moving to the northeast at about 30 miles per hour. So this one is moving a little bit slower, but it is set to expire at 4:45. So we'll be monitoring this as it continues to progress. And let me zoom a little bit farther in, and you can see this is basically associated with that same batch of storms that we've been watching that had the other two warnings. So this is all in that same general area. And let's see, as we look at, I'm going to take a look at what areas are all involved in this. So we've got Port Tampa, Port Sutton, Orient Park. It's basically anything south of 275 and I-4 as you're going across the southern tip there, or the Palmacia area, and then extending back over onto the other side of the bay. I'll try and get rid of all that mess there so you can take another look here on the radar and get a better perspective of where we're talking about. So Riverview is on the south side of this warning box, and then Orient Park is on the north side. Downtown Tampa, right at the interchange there of 275 and I-4, is right about the line of where that tornado warning is. So again, anything going from MacDill Air Force Base across the bay and then heading into that Orient Park area and just north of Riverview, so across 301, that's the area of concern for right now. Again, whether or not this rotation holds together, you're at least going to be getting the very strong gusty winds associated with it, as well as the heavy rainfall. As we take a look and see about, let's take a look for rotation here as well. We're looking at the velocity, and you can see as we zoom a little bit closer, This is the area of concern where you see that bright green spot right there next to the red, and you see the notch as well.
A little bit of a hook there.
Yeah, so this area right in here is
a little bit of lightning around it too. So, my phone's been blowing up. All my kids are like, "Dad, we just got a tornado warning emergency. Are we okay?" I'm like, "Guys, turn on TV." I mean, we're
exactly.
talking
There's
about
a place for you to get the information other than my cell phone.
Exactly,
Right.
but there they are. I mean, I mean, and Shay, this is, I mean, it really is the classic stuff here where you've got this squall line, you've got this 15, 20 mile wide area, and within it, there's a lot of disturbance, there's a lot of spin, and it turns into these little bitty tornadoes. Let's hope they stay little bitty. At this point, haven't heard about any damage, but it's always possible. So this is why we're on here, trying to kind of let you know the area that is at the highest risk. It doesn't mean you're going to necessarily have it where you are, but if I were you, I'd be like, I want to know. I mean, I want to know where most of this spin is. And this one area, it makes a lot of sense that as this, because remember, the entire Bay Area is under a tornado watch. This hasn't just been one special area. And why is the entire Bay Area? Because that squall line runs all the way through our area. So, I mean, there's the watch. It rains. Now, here's something to remember. Yes, officially, it remains in effect for several hours. But anywhere west of that red, it's over. All right? Anywhere, there's your line, okay?
Right across I-75.
Yeah, pretty much I-75. So anywhere west of there, it's done because the squall line has gone through, and this won't turn into anything severe. So if you live in Pinellas County, except for maybe extreme southeastern Pinellas, it's over. If you live in Pasco County, west of I-75, it's over. If you live in Hernando County, same thing. Almost all of Hernando, it's over. Citrus is over. Hillsborough, you're just getting it. Polk, you haven't even seen it yet. There is the line, and this will hang together, which is why the tornado watch is in effect for the entire area. I mean, there is your line, and there is the rotation that Shay was talking about. I mean, you can see it. As a matter of fact, let's go back to that Riverview cam if we can. I'm curious if we're seeing anything different, because that was kind of pointed in the direction that if we were to see something, you might be able to see. I mean, every now and again, you might be able to see some rotation. So, well, you can't see much of anything because it's looks like Armageddon. Yeah, definitely a lot of clouds, definitely some, although the rain, not really getting the camera lens too much. But yeah, if the visibility were a little bit better, I mean, there would be a chance you could see something. But at this point, luckily, we're not. And even if it were there, you probably wouldn't be able to see it anyway because it is really coming down. But right there, downtown Tampa, you're in the middle of it. All right? Carrollwood, it's just about done for you. Thonotosassa, it's just coming your way. Wesley Chapel, you're right in the middle of it. I mean, again, if it extends, there's UT, right in the middle of it. So these areas, you're obviously getting the heavy rain and the gusty winds. I know human nature is when you hear tornado warning, that's a code for freaking out because tornadoes are scary because we see so many pictures of stuff up north. But looking at the towers that we're seeing here with our cams and Rivergate and whatnot, so far so good. I mean, yes, we still have that tornado warning, that little cell that's going across the bay. But really all that's happening here, as we go back to radar, all that's happening here is you have this line of rough weather, and within the line, there's little bitty areas of spin. That's all it is. And within those spin, at this point, the radar is looking at it and seeing the spin and saying, okay, this could be a tornado. As Shay mentioned a couple minutes ago, may not be making it all the way to the ground. I mean, think about that. That radar is looking up 5,000, 10,000 feet, whatever the case may be. All right, so it might see some spin, but it doesn't make it all the way down to the ground, so we don't actually experience it here. But the Weather Service is going to issue a warning. Now, there are times where we see what's known as a debris ball when we look at it, and you can actually tell at that point that there is a tornado on the ground. I have not seen that. And this is that debris tracker. So you would be able to actually see if there was any kind of debris going on. I'm just not seeing anything that would show me that that is the case right now. And if it were over water, it would be,
so
you got this right there.
Yeah, so it's a media report, but again, but they're saying that the debris field is high on radar over the Humana Hospital Sun Bay, east of Tropicana Field. So
right
this
there
would be that general area that they're talking about. But it is hard to find these spots, especially with the radar centered over Ruskin. You get a lot of that scatter that's right around the radar, which can sometimes make it a little difficult. There's another spot as well, but that's near downtown Tampa. Again, I don't know that
is part of the warning, though, right?
Yeah, that is part of the warning area, but I'm not seeing anyone mentioning anything about that.
What exactly, again, you caught my attention with the Humana. What exactly was that again?
Yeah, so it's the Humana Hospital Sun Bay, east of Tropicana Field.
And what did it just say?
It was saying that the debris field is high on the radar.
And
that's
what we were looking
at in this area.
Yeah, but the thing is, that cell is now in the Gulf,
right,
in the Bay, rather.
Right, exactly. So that one has already moved through. They're just saying that they're seeing the debris field that we can see here on the radar.
Well, and at this point, you have to remember, too, because everybody's interconnected on social media and whatnot. I mean, I would kind of think if we were getting any kind of damage, per se, we would have probably seen it or heard it by now. And at this point, hopefully, fingers crossed, that is just not the case. But we still have, and now this tornado warning, the west side of it has been cut off, and now it is expanding eastward, and now it's including on the other side of the bay, I mean, over toward Riverview and back up toward Brandon, you know, east of downtown Tampa. So that's making the assumption that this cell does stay intact. Now, the warning is set to expire in 4 minutes. Shay, let's go to reflectivity on this one, our velocity rather, and see if we're, and you're kind of still seeing the same thing as you were looking at, you know.
I'm going to zoom in a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, right in there. I mean, you could see a little more rotation. A lot of times, I'll tell you too, the Weather Service will update within a warned time and say, hey, we're still tracking this area. It's still a threat. It's something we have to watch. Not getting that yet. In fact, the majority of what's happened is a warning has been issued, it's set for 15 or 20 minutes, and then it expires. And we're not getting updates. So that's usually good news at this point, but we're still looking at a pretty significant squall line, excuse me, and that squall line is certainly capable of producing at any point in time, no matter where you are, of the possibility of some spin. Now, we do have a shot from the Gandy, which, Paul, you were talking about this earlier. I mean, it's rush hour.
Yikes.
Oof.
Don't want to be on that bridge right now if you can't help it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Paul brought up I think the best question. You know, hey, if I'm in an area where it's storming, should I just hunker down, as Don Gramez used to say, or should I just hang out for 20 minutes? And I think they should. There's no reason to go out in this. I mean, softball practice is going to get canceled, and you know, and whatnot. So I mean, there it is. I mean, yet there are still some folks on, and it is obviously a very slow go. Forget the fact that visibility is so bad as it is anyway. Then you throw in 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts. I mean, it's just a bad situation. I remember, Shay, wasn't that original tornado warning partially for Gulfport?
Yes.
Yeah, because Casey Albritton is there and has been reporting throughout the afternoon and evening. I don't know if she's available, but okay, I'm curious. As that line came through, Casey, were you seeing some very gusty winds and squally weather? My guess is now that's probably improved quite a bit.
Yeah, so about 10, 15 minutes ago, we saw probably the worst of the storm here in Gulfport. We saw a lot of winds. We saw a lot of rain coming through, lightning, thunder, and so it did get pretty gusty out here. But since then it has calmed down. It's really not raining as much anymore, more of just sprinkling out here. But the winds are still there. They have improved quite a bit. You can see those trees that I showed you earlier. They were a lot more intense moving in the wind, but now they've settled down quite a bit. I think one thing that we're now seeing out here is actually the flooding, and this is just from the rain. You can see that it's actually getting up near this Caddy's restaurant here in Gulfport. It's getting very close to there, and again, that's just from the rain. That's not even any water coming up over the seawall or anything. And if you hang on just a second, we have these trucks. Cars are just coming through here again because it is rush hour traffic right now. So people are just coming through this water, and that's something that you really want to avoid. avoid as much as possible, because even a little bit of flooding could be dangerous if you do try to drive through that. So that's a big key here. Make sure you avoid those flooded roads out here. But we're keeping an eye on everything. Everything is improving a lot out here, and so hopefully that continues. I'm Casey Albritton in Pinellas County, ABC Action News.
Now, I'll give Casey a little bit of a Meteorology 101 thing here. She's right. That was rainwater. But the reason that rainwater has not drained is because of the winds back behind pushing in behind that squall line. The same reason Eric Waxler had that rain, or had the surge going, the waves passing over the seawall, is because those winds shifted out of the northwest and started pushing it that direction. Well, in Gulfport, same thing happens. When you get that northwest wind behind the squall line, if the water's being pushed out, where does rainwater typically drain? It drains down and goes out into the bay or the Gulf, right? Or into some local rivers or whatnot. But if that water's being pushed in, that rainwater can't drain. And I think we all know what that's like during hurricane season, when many times areas like Shore Acres and other spots can flood, not necessarily because they've had excessive rain, but because the rain that they have had is unable to drain like it typically did. So that's something that we kind of see along the coast in hurricane season, and obviously this time of the year when the squall line comes through. So winds continue to gust out ahead. There is a look at the line. Shay, is that warning canceled?
It is.
There you go. So it's kind of what we were expecting. The tornado warning just canceled for Hillsborough County, but we've had, what, 4 so far? I think we've had 4 warnings. And yeah, so with that being said, there is your squall line. If you live west of that line, it's over for you. The severe threat is over. Yes, you're still in a tornado watch, but no, you have nothing to worry about. That line extends into central Hillsborough County, western Manatee. Well, Manatee, you're just beginning to get it right now. Sarasota, same thing. And might even be a little spin just offshore of Sarasota as well. But this is your line. East of it, still under tornado watch. Still the possibility there could be a tornado warning. I mean, it's pretty common when once a squall line is showing its hand, per se, and saying, all right, we're going to have a couple of areas of spin. A lot of times you'll see a few more before it's all said and done. Now, quite often, right along the coast is where most of it is, but we're still seeing new development even right now, which is why the entire Bay Area is under that tornado watch. But I'll say it again, if you live anywhere from that line west, that part of the storm is over for you. Still gonna be some winds and some rain, still raining, but the severe threat is no longer an issue. Then your attention turns to coastal flooding. Not rainwater, coastal flooding pushed in at high tide, especially because of that wind coming in off the Gulf. Coastal flood warning. These are the estimated areas of water rise. This is lower than last month, but still is some water rise. And we talked about this after the last storm. I mean, I get it, because where the direction your home is facing is everything when it comes to this kind of setup. Anytime you get winds coming in from whatever direction, if your home is facing that direction, then you're more likely to have water. If your home is facing another direction from opposite of the winds, then you're probably not going to get it. So that's why there is no easy answer. Am I going to flood here? Am I going to flood there? It just really completely depends on where your home is located, whether it's on the bay or whether it's on the Gulf. But these are your high tides, all right? And that is when we're most concerned, because the winds have shifted by then. They're shifted now, for that matter, along the coast. And as you approach your next high tide, which happens to be one of the highest tides of the month, that's the bad news, because any kind of water rise will just be accentuated because you're already higher than average, and then you throw in a water rise from a pretty strong cold front and strong northwest winds behind it. So 2 to 4 feet northern counties, 2 to 3 feet central counties, and down south, coastal flood warning remains in effect through high tide. So there's your line. Obviously, if you're living west of this, you got nothing to worry about. But if you're along that front, so that means Polk County, you're going to be seeing this over the next hour. Is it possible? I mean, you've still got Hillsborough County. Shay was talking about I-75. That's a pretty good divider right now. East of the line, you're still facing the risk of severe thunderstorm warnings. You're still facing the risk of a couple of tornado warnings. Regardless of whether you have a warning or not, this is the time frame we've been saying for days. 20, 25 minutes of rough weather. Gusty winds, torrential downpours, possibility of a tornado. Once, and that's at the leading edge, right? The leading edge, 20 to 25 minutes. Once that passes through, it rains for another couple hours, still breezy, but no severe weather whatsoever, all right? So you can see out ahead of it, there are severe thunderstorm warnings heading to Orlando. There's severe thunderstorm warnings heading over to the East Coast, but at least right now, we are looking at no additional warnings, at least at this point in time. But still, as we showed you with Casey and checking out some of our cams, let's go back to the traffic cams too, because Paul hit the nail on the head with this. I mean, it's rush hour now, and you know, even though the severe threat for much of the area has ended, it's you know, the Skyway, it's still moving though, and it's still open, and that's saying something because honestly, Shay, I mean, I'm looking at the radar here. The worst of it is probably over the Skyway right now.
Yeah, let's check some of the rainfall, the intensity of it. And it looks like it's coming down. I mean, we've certainly seen higher, but anywhere from about a half an inch per hour to a little over 2 inches per hour. So it is coming down at a decent rate in pockets. But again, that's also why you were saying that this is going to move through pretty quickly. You're not going to get that level of intense rain for a long duration of time. So as we zoom back out here, you can see how much of the area is still is behind this stronger line of storms versus how much is ahead of it. And I'd say we're at least 50% through this because it is weakening as well as it's moving off to the south and east. As we take a look at the lightning numbers, we're down to 376 in the last 30 minutes. We started out around, 2:30, 3 o'clock with numbers in the 1,200 to 1,300 range. So we are certainly seeing this whole line weakening. And although it does still have the potential for severe storms, it's not nearly as intense as it was at one point earlier today. So looking back over Tampa Bay, you can see we do no longer have any active warnings, but if you're anywhere from 301 on south through I-75 heading down toward Riverview, you're still going to see some of this very intense rain and the strong winds that go along with it. We were looking at the wind shifting direction, so just so you can see, we've had those gusts into the 35 to 45 mile per hour range for quite some time today, and now it looks like, we do have a confirmed thunderstorm wind gust in Gulfport at 63 miles per hour. So not necessarily spin,
right,
but wind gusts at 63.
Clam Bayou. And Shay, also, the one thing I was pointing out as well, in addition to that wind gust, look at that cell that's offshore of Sarasota. That definitely looks like it's showing a little more rotation than many of the others have so far. So I definitely think areas around Sarasota, maybe Siesta Key, I mean, they could see a warning out of this because the Weather Service is usually pretty bullish on issuing warnings that are water spouts. It's around the Siesta Key area, yeah. Here's a look at Siesta Key, actually. Great shot. And again, the wind's out ahead of it. It's not quite there yet, but I would say probably in about 10, 15 minutes it will be. That area, that track that looks like it's, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 miles offshore. If we go back to Max 1 and show you what we're talking about here. So you've got two areas that are kind of honing in on western Sarasota County. See it right here. So there's the one, all right? There's the one. And that one looks a little bit more impressive than this one does. But again, where is it? It's right along the edge of that squall line. So if that line has passed you, it's over for you. The severe threat is over. If that line is approaching you or has yet to come, then you still are under a tornado watch and you face the risk of some severe weather. But right in there, western Manatee, and then down towards Sarasota, I mean, there's your squall line. I mean, it extends, and I'll tell you, a lot of times in our area, the squall lines kind of lose their punch when they get into our southern counties. This is not one of those times. I mean, it extends all the way up, still through Hillsborough County, eastern Pasco County. So it's moving this way, all right? All of this is moving that way. And as it approaches, whether it's eastern or central Hillsborough County, most of Manatee County, all of Sarasota County, within that squall line, we were showing you that little spin, it's certainly a possibility that we could see additional warnings. In fact, again, there it is right there. These are not warnings. These are called shear markers. They're this is what the computer looks at the radar and says, oh, okay, there's some spin there. Now, in terms of the Titan impact, that's a 5. So the scale goes from 1 to 10. 10 means an absolutely positively a tornado. 0 means there isn't one. 5 is, 6. Yeah, so, I mean, I think there's a legitimate chance we could be looking at a waterspout offshore. And if this were to hang together as it is now, I would kind of expect to see a tornado warning for western Sarasota County or southwestern Manatee County if this hangs together for another 10 miles. Because usually what will happen is the Weather Service will wait until, maybe 4 or 5 miles offshore. And they're usually great about giving forewarning. Because my take is if you see a waterspout 5 miles offshore and you think it's going to hang together, then pull the trigger and issue a warning. Otherwise, if you wait until it moves onshore, what's the point? I mean, our goal with the Weather Service and us as well is to provide you guys notice of what's happening, right? So if we're able to tell you that 5 miles before it actually moves onshore, that's what our jobs are. So when you look at that area, if it were to hang together, I would say if it does, we'd probably get a warning within 5 or 6 minutes if, again, it hangs together. It may not. Let's hope it doesn't. But, Shay, this still continues to extend all the way into Hillsborough and Pasco as well, right?
Yeah, we've still got quite a bit of rain and quite a few storms that are back behind it. But as you said, it's that line that we've been watching that is most intense that is the biggest concern. Everything that's developing behind it to the west of I-75, you can see here from Spring Hill into Inverness and then around the Holiday area, anything south of Jasmine Estates going down to Tarpon Springs. You do still have these batches of very heavy rain and some thunderstorms that are going to be rolling through, but this is not the concern for the severe storms. It's what's ahead of it. And again, most of it to the east of I-75 now and passing through Zephyr Hills. So if you're in the Zephyr Hills area, conditions should start improving. We've also noticed a really big shift in the winds behind this. So we've had those 35 to 45 mile per hour gusts for much of the day. And now as we're getting behind this system, we're starting to see the wind speeds coming down pretty quickly. And they are now shifting to the northwest coming in across the Gulf. And again, we're transitioning here, even though there is that risk of severe storms still along the line and ahead of it. Behind it, as the winds start to move onshore, we'll start to see the increasing concern here in some of our northern counties along the coast for the coastal flooding as we approach high tide here into tonight. But right now, take a look at those. Just the sustained winds are up to about 30 miles per hour ahead of the front around Lakeland and into Haines City and in the mid to upper 20s to the south, and even still in the 30s to the south around Sarasota. And these are the sustained winds, not the gusts. But you look behind it, and winds are as low as down to 8 miles per hour. So again, a big transition there ahead of that rainfall along the line and then behind it. And although it is moving through very quickly, it's certainly very intense as it's been coming through. As we take a look again at the line of storms that we've got, and we do not have any active warnings at the moment. We do still have a tornado watch in effect for all of our viewing area. But if you are to the west or northwest of that line, the very bright red line that you're seeing there moving across I-4 and down I-75 south of Tampa. So this line right here, if you are ahead of that, there is a much greater concern for severe weather than there would be if you are back here. You're still getting the heavy rain and some thunderstorms, but again, not necessarily the same risk of severe storms. And I think the biggest concern we've had has been in our southern counties around Manatee and Sarasota. As this line moves onshore, that's where we've been watching the potential for some spin. But at this point, no warnings are in place.
All right, Shay. So again, what we're going to do here, we're going to kind of tie everything up here. As Shay mentioned, at this point in time, we're still under tornado watch if you live from this line east. Technically, I mean, maybe it hasn't been canceled for the west, but you can forget about it. You have no threat of anything severe on the west side of this line. So that means eastern Hillsborough County, most of Manatee, all of Sarasota, all of Polk, Hardy, DeSoto, Highlands. You still have the threat of severe weather. This line lasts 20, 25 minutes as it moves through your spot. Anywhere from here east, you're still looking at it. West, not so much. Then we turn our attention to the possibility of coastal flooding, and now a severe thunderstorm warning has just been issued for this area including Sarasota, Manatee, and Hillsborough County. And it's possible that there could be a tornado warning issued out of this as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to tie it all up. We'll be back in just a minute. We'll give you the latest on our severe weather coverage and continue with ABC Action News at 5. We'll see you in just a minute.
Live from Tampa Bay streaming news leader, this is ABC Action News, taking action for you.
Right now at 5 tonight, we're tracking that severe weather moving right through the Tampa Bay area. Tornado watches in effect right now.
And tornadoes hit the Panhandle earlier today. Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency for 49 counties, including the entire Tampa Bay area.
All right, we have teams spread out all over the Tampa Bay area tonight. Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips here in the studio to walk you through the storm, the timing, and what is supposed to happen next. And that is where we do begin, right at the top here at 5. This major winter system that blew across the United States is now here. Thank you for being with us. I'm Paul LeGrone.
And I'm Lauren St. Germain. Let's start with Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips. Denis, you've been tracking this all afternoon, the past 2 hours. You've been on. So where are we standing right now?
Well, we have a new warning in effect, severe thunderstorm warning. Shay has been tracking this as well, but this is your squall line, okay? And that line moved through our coastal areas with tornado warnings in Palm Harbor, in Tarpon Springs. We've had tornado warnings from Gulfport. We've had tornado warnings in Hillsborough County for Tampa. At this point, anywhere east of this line is still under tornado watch. If you live west of this line, the threat has ended, all right? Now, there's still some storms out there, and we'll keep our eyes on them because you never say never in weather in the Bay Area. But at this point in time, it's at the line and east. So what does that mean? 20-25 minutes when it arrives in your area of very gusty winds, 40 to 55 miles an hour, maybe a little higher. All right, heavy rain, lots of lightning, although lightning is beginning to wane now, and the threat of an isolated tornado, which we've had at least 3 or 4 show up on radar. At this point, have not seen any confirmation that they actually made it down to the ground. So that's phase 1, if you will. The second is coastal flooding. And coastal flooding is one of those issues that it's really tricky to determine exactly where and when for people because it all depends on where their home is located. But because the front has moved through our coastal areas, the winds have shifted to the northwest and water is already being pushed up. We're already at a high tide of nearly 3 feet tonight. So you're already starting with more water than you would on any given time, right? Then when you approach high tide, along with that water being pushed in, that's when we would expect some coastal flooding. How much? 2 to 3 feet expected. Worst case scenario, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Manatee, Sarasota. Maybe as high as 3 to 4 feet as you go farther to the north from Spring Hill up towards Citrus County. It will not be as bad as it was a month ago, but there will still be areas that are going to flood. And the timing of that is mostly mid-evening until maybe around midnight. And then at that point, the numbers are going to start to drop off again. And by then, the storm will be far enough away that I don't think we're going to have to deal with it tomorrow. So let's go back to radar again real quick. I want to show you we still officially are in a tornado watch for our central and our eastern counties. But there's the line as it came through. And we still have that severe thunderstorm warning, the yellow box for part of Hillsborough, for part of Manatee and Sarasota. If there are any warnings, specifically tornado warnings issued, we'll break it immediately and have it for you. Guys?
All right, Denis, thank you. Let's get on over to Eric Waxler. He's live in Hudson Beach for us in Pasco. Eric, you noticed the water was crashing over the seawall there. Flooding was a concern in Pasco. What are you seeing there now?
Yeah, things have really calmed down, Paul. Just about an hour ago, a squall came through and these Gulf waters really started chopping up, and water was pouring over this seawall here at Hudson Beach in North Pasco County. But now it's receding a bit and the waters have calmed. We're not seeing anywhere close to the wind gusts that we were seeing in the last couple of hours. There is a little bit of rain, but things definitely have calmed down. We've had people come out here to take a look and see this unusual January weather. But over at Inn on the Gulf restaurant, people are eating dinner, and business may be getting back to normal here a little bit. And hopefully things don't get too bad later on in the evening as far as flooding. But right now it's an ominous but beautiful sight here in Hudson Beach as we deal with this unusual weather here in January. In Hudson Beach, I'm Eric Waxler, ABC Action News. Back to you.
You said it, Eric. January. What a surreal feeling right now. Here's a live look outside the Gandy Bridge. If you know Tampa Bay, you know. You work your way south. It's Courtney Campbell to the north, Howard Franklin right there in the middle, and the Gandys there on the south end of the bay. It's nasty out there. Traffic is lighter, I would imagine, for a typical 5 o'clock rush hour on this Tuesday afternoon. So perhaps people holding tight, Tampa Bay, as you wait for this system to pass through.
And good news that none of the bridges actually shut down this afternoon, so that's very good news there. We do want to talk to you a little bit about some power outages that we're seeing right now. We are seeing a considerable amount. In Pinellas, about 10,000 people out of power, several up in the Palm Harbor area, and in Hillsborough, it's sitting at about 6,000 right now, mainly around the Lutz area on the west side of 41, up in Pasco, about 5,000 out there.
Just get through the next couple hours, you'll be all right. Meanwhile, in Pinellas County, we're seeing power outages, about 3,000 folks in Palm Harbor, 3,000 customers without power around Indian Shores. Right now, the Pinellas County coastal communities, they are preparing for any impacts that could come from the storm. Some areas have already flooded a handful of times already in the past year.
Unfortunately, and last year as well. ABC Action News reporter Casey Albritton joins us now live from Gulfport. Casey, you spoke with people who are really not taking any chances with this storm.
Yeah, and here in Gulfport, things have really actually started to settle down. Within the last hour, things have improved significantly. The winds are not nearly as strong. It's really not raining a whole lot, but the main concern out here is the flooding. Take a look behind me. You can see the roads are already filling up with water, and this is just from the rain that's been pouring over the last couple of hours. But business owners here in Gulfport say flooding is typically a big issue, and with up to 3 feet of flooding predicted in the area, restaurants like O'Maddy's are getting ready. Employees spent the day moving their furniture and doors and making sure their doors and windows are sealed. Pinellas County leaders say it's important for residents who typically see flooding to prepare and make sure that their homes and restaurants are safe. Officials say people should bring in any items left out on porches and use sandbags to protect their homes. Ray Laughlin works at O'Maddy's and says it's better to be safe than sorry.
Coming into this year, it's been relatively busy. You know, we had a couple of different situations where, water came up, onto the sidewalk, and, it can be a problem, so, but yeah, it's kind of part of what you deal with when you're, in paradise.
And officials say if you typically see flooding in your neighborhood, you should expect to see some flooding again tonight. And Pinellas County leaders tell me they're going to be sending out teams all day tomorrow to assess any damage left behind from this storm. In Pinellas County, I'm Casey Albritton, ABC Action News.
Casey, thank you. And we do have some video coming in from the Panhandle. This is from earlier today, and you can see the video shows the extent of the damage up there. National Weather Service reported a large and extremely dangerous tornado near Panama City. Social media videos from the lower Grand Lagoon look to show pretty extensive damage after the storm passed. And according to data from the Storm Prediction Center, at least 5 tornadoes were reported this morning. Just incredible to see those aerial images. And this is more video from the ground in Panama City Beach of homes really knocked off their foundations. Look at the gray one in the middle, some leaning sideways on other homes, a lot of debris out there. And the Treasure Island Marina in Bay County was once again damaged.
Yeah, they got it bad up there. A dangerous tornado also hitting near the city of Mariana. That's about an hour north of Panama City Beach. Here's the video. Some of the tornado damage there, roofs were ripped off and some trees were torn down. Meanwhile, Manatee County, Pasco counties have both issued local state of emergencies. This really allows them to speed up their responses and delivering resources. The governor today also putting in place a state of emergency for 49 Florida counties. That's nearly 3/4 of the entire state. That does include Hillsborough, Pinellas, Polk, Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus counties, so much of Tampa Bay. The executive order would also allow Florida to receive federal assistance as well as resources in the event of major damage.
And the governor was pulling double duty today. Before he was at the EOC, he was giving the State of the State address today at the Capitol. Governor DeSantis spoke for more than 30 minutes this morning. He really hammered blue states and cities for spending and crime policies, and then gave a long list of his GOP accomplishments from previous sessions. The Republican supermajority, meanwhile, is ready to work. They offered another slate of GOP bills. They include deregulating public schools, an effort to lower the buying age of long guns and rifles to 18, easing child labor laws, and eliminating no-cause vote by mail. So with that start, I wanted to chat with all of you about this year in Tallahassee. Today, we want to know what you think the most important issue is in Florida this year. What should lawmakers be working on? Let's go find out.
Personally, I'm worried about gun safety. I have 2 small children, and I worry about school shootings. And I think that what's been happening with violence and guns is just, it can't keep happening. Something has to change.
You live in Florida now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important issue lawmakers should be focusing on this year?
Immigration. I just don't like the idea of letting people in without vetting them.
Honest, to be truthful, women's rights. They need to make their own decisions, not the legislators. The women should have their own say in what they should do with their body.
We also went to where a lot of Floridians are. All right, Florida friends, I got a question for you. Social media. What do you think is the most important topic in the state this year? Like, what do you think lawmakers should really focus a lot of attention on? Almost all of the